Thank you all for being here today. This is our first Career Connections webinar for the fall semester. My name is Jeanette Buriel Foote, and I'm the Associate Director for Academic and Career Success. This is a 30-minute session, and we are glad you could join us today. Our presenter today is Craig Walker, and his presentation is titled The Recruiter's Cheat Sheet: How to Stand Out in the Hiring Process. Craig is a recruiting specialist with Central Bank, a proud banking partner with Park University. Craig brings a background in recruiting, hospitality, and banking, and has spent his career talking with people about their next career move. He now spends his days interviewing candidates, working with hiring managers, and helping people navigate the sometimes intimidating world of job searching. Today, he's here to share what recruiters are actually looking for when you walk into an interview and hopefully make the process feel a little less intimidating. Craig will begin his presentation and will reserve time at the end for questions. Please feel free to post your questions in the chat throughout the session. Okay, thank you, Craig.
Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for attending. I'm super happy to be here, and thank you, Jeanette, for inviting me to speak today on navigating the hiring process and making a lasting impression with employers. And thank you, Park University, for having me as well. It means a lot to be here and connect with all of you, so I look forward to the discussions. So today, the purpose of this presentation is to pull back the curtain a little bit on the hiring process from my perspective, the recruiter's perspective, and I want to tell you about what actually stands out when we look at resumes and what we're listening for during interviews and how you can position yourself to stand out as a candidate. So to give you some context on who I am, my name is Craig Walker. I'm a recruiting specialist at Central Bank. I've been in recruiting for about 5 years now, and I've been with Central Bank for the past 2. Before recruiting, I spent about 15 years in Chicago working in hospitality and hotel leadership roles. So I've sat on both sides of the interview table. I've been the candidate trying to land the job, and I've been the hiring leader making decisions. But today, my role is focused entirely on assisting hiring managers to make the right decisions. And what I do as a recruiter. So at Central Bank, I recruit for a wide range of positions. So on the retail side, that includes tellers, bankers, branch managers. On the corporate and operations side, that includes mortgage lenders, loan officers, commercial lending team members, deposit operations, fraud prevention, marketing. And a big part of my job is conducting phone interviews and screening resumes and guiding candidates through the hiring process. And so at this point, I've probably conducted thousands of phone interviews. I've sent tens of thousands of messages to candidates on LinkedIn and Indeed and via emails. I review hundreds of resumes every single day. I talk to candidates every single day on the phone. I work directly with hiring managers to decide who moves forward and who doesn't. Just before this call, I was extending an offer to a candidate who accepted. So it's already been a pretty busy day. But bottom line, today I'm going to show you what actually stands out to recruiters. So usually, and so to preface things here, usually when I give a presentation on effective interviewing, I'm speaking to a room full of bank managers and I'm training them on how to vet you. So I'm teaching them how to spot red flags, how to decide who gets the job. But today we're going to do something way more fun. So we're going to flip the script. I've crafted this presentation using the actual training materials I use to teach our hiring managers. So we're going to look at their cheat sheet so that you can have the answers to the test. My goal is simple. So when you leave here, you're going to know exactly what we're looking for, why we ask the questions we ask, and how you can position yourself to be the candidate we can't wait to hire. And so before you even get to the interview, we definitely need to talk about the gatekeeper, which is the resume. And in the recruiting world, there's a famous statistic. Recruiters spend an average of 6 to 10 seconds on an initial resume scan. And that sounds harsh, right? You spend hours on this document, stressing out over all the little details, and I spend 6 seconds. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm looking at hundreds of resumes a day. At larger companies, the Amazons, the Googles, that scale is almost unimaginable, and they receive millions of resumes a year, and they use automated systems to filter you out before a human even blinks at your name. So the 6 second rule isn't recruiters being dismissive, it's recruiters being efficient so that they can find the best person for their teams. So what am I looking for in those 6 seconds? And I'm going to be honest here. The first thing I look at is tenure. I want to see if your resume tells a story. Does it show career progression? Did you start as a banker and move to a team lead, or did you jump to a different company every time things got difficult? And when I look at your dates of employment, I'm asking one question. Is this person a job hopper or are they a career grower? And so recruiters, we look for reliability. If I see a resume with 4 jobs in 2 years and each stay is only 6 months, so you've got 4 months here, 2 months there, 6 months there, another 3 months here, that doesn't really show a ton of reliability. And that's a massive red flag. It takes about 6 months just to get fully trained in a professional role. So if you leave after 6 months, companies have invested thousands of dollars in you and they haven't even seen any return yet on their investment. When there are short stops on a resume, we start questioning how much developing did you actually do at that job? Did you really spearhead initiatives to develop systems, to improve efficiency if you're only there for 4 months? How likely is a company implementing a system you built if you only just got there? You probably haven't even got your email signature up yet if you've been there 2 months. But I want to pause here for you specifically. Now, as college students and future graduates, tenure isn't looked upon as heavily. We understand, you're going to have part-time jobs, you're going to have summer gigs, you're going to have internships, you're going to have periods where you may not have any work experience at all. When I talk about tenure, realize that this is for when you are 2 to 3 jobs, into your postgraduate career. So keep this in mind as you start landing your first jobs after college. You want to be able to find an opportunity where you can see yourself growing long term. You don't want to find yourself, 2 to 3 years post graduation and you've got 3, 4, 5 jobs. That's going to that's going to be a tough thing to reset on your resume. Now, the next thing I'm looking for on a resume is relevant titles. So as recruiters, we know exactly what is required for the roles we fill. So on that first initial glance, when I'm scanning your resume, I'm not looking into the bullet points quite yet. I'm looking for job titles with companies that have transferable skills. So think of your job title as a shortcut for a recruiter's brain. If I see server or retail associate, my brain immediately checks the box for customer service and cash handling. For our banking and retail roles, if you're applying for a teller or a banker at one of our branches, I'm scanning your resume for two things, cash handling and people skills. If your title is cashier at a grocery store, I already know you can handle high volume transactions and stay accurate under pressure. I don't need to read the bullet points for that. If your title is server or front desk, I know you can handle difficult conversations and build rapport with people. Now, for your business analytics and back office roles, I know many of you are looking at more data-driven or analytical roles. So you might think your job at the library or the local coffee shop, is not relevant, but it is if you frame it right. If you worked in a warehouse or a stock room, your transferable skill is inventory management and accuracy. And that's, as you know, the foundation of data analytics. If you worked a campus office job, highlight your use of Microsoft Office or specialized, software or databases. If you're looking for an analyst role, I'm looking for titles that imply process. Did you coordinate? Did you schedule? Did you manage? Those words tell me you have the logical mindset needed to sit in our fraud or deposit operation departments. But here's the real secret. You don't have to guess which words I'm scanning for. You actually have the answer key in your hand before you even hit apply. I tell every applicant this. The job qualifications on a job posting are the key. They aren't just suggestions put there by HR. They are the checklist the hiring manager handed me. When a manager sits down in my office, they say, Craig, I'm busy, I'm stressed. I need someone who specifically knows Excel. I need someone who can thrive in a fast-paced environment. So when I look at your resume, I'm literally holding the job qualifications in one hand and I'm holding your resume in the other, looking for a match. So you have to translate your experience to match my checklist. If the job post says fast paced and you worked at a busy Starbucks during finals week, don't just put barista, put thrived in a fast paced environment right in your summary or your bullet points. If it says analytical and you manage the budget for a student club, don't let that just be a footnote. Use the word analytical in your title or your description. So if you use words from the job qualifications on a job post to describe the work you've already done, you make it impossible for me to only spend 6 seconds on your resume. You force me to stop and say, wait, this person has exactly what I'm looking for. Let me dive into that resume and really get into the nuts and bolts. Lastly, on this piece, the elephant in the room, cover letters. And how many of you write your cover letters? And I know you probably think cover letters are getting sent into a black hole, but I do read them. I really do. I read every single one. I know that 99% of them have been written by AI, but I don't care if you use AI to help you structure it. I'm just scanning for substance. I want just a few sentences to show that you actually looked at our website, you understand our culture. It's a great way to explain, career breaks. It's a great way to explain job transitions or industry, you changing industries. Cover letters are a great way to explain that before you get into a phone interview. Now, what are recruiters listening for during a phone interview? So you submitted the resume, it's passed the 6 second test, and you get the email that says, let's set up a quick phone call. And so that is going to be the phone screen, the phone interview. And I always like to explain what this step actually is from my perspective, because once you understand the goal of the call, it becomes much easier to prepare for. And so, phone interview, usually about 15 to 30 minutes, and it's not designed to be an interrogation about technical details. Your resume already told me you have the skills needed for the job. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't be calling you. What I'm really trying to figure out during that 30-minute conversation is a few simple things. Can you communicate clearly? Do you have confident communication skills? Can you speak confidently about the experiences listed on your resume? If you used AI to craft your resume and I start diving into your bullet points and you can't speak confidently about that, I'm going to second guess your abilities. And next, what I'm trying to understand is, would I feel comfortable introducing you to the hiring manager for the next step? As a recruiter, I'm not the technical expert in every field. I can't pretend to know everything there is to know about finance or banking or data analytics. I'm a recruiter. I can only pretend to know about recruiting. So what I am listening for is whether you can connect your skills to real experiences. Can you talk about what you did, what you learned, and how it applies to the job you applied for? And if you can do that, you're already doing better than 90% of the applicants. Now, let me share a few practical tips for your phone interview. So the first tip, real simple, treat a phone interview like a real interview. Even though we cannot see each other, the preparations should still be the same. Definitely take it somewhere quiet where you can focus, have your resume in front of you so that you can refer to it, be able to cross-reference your notes or your dates. One of the advantages of a phone interview is that you can have those resources right in front of you, so use that to your advantage. Second tip, you got to bring energy. You got to bring a lot of energy to the phone call. In a face-to-face interview, I can see your smile, I can see your body language, but over the phone, all I have is your voice. So your tone carries a lot of the communication. You don't need to sound overly rehearsed or overly enthusiastic. Just sound like you're genuinely happy to be having the conversation. I've had people yawn on a phone interview. Not a good look. So don't yawn. Drink your coffee. Be awake. Bring the energy. Um, you can hear a smile through a phone call. So definitely a trick I like to share. Smile while you're talking. It sounds simple, but it does change the tone of your voice, makes you sound more engaged, more approachable. And the third tip is to be yourself. A phone screen is not about delivering perfectly memorized answers. What I'm really trying to understand is how you communicate and how you think about your experiences, especially in a relationship-driven business like banking. Culture fit matters a lot. I'm thinking about, could this person sit across from a customer and build trust? Would a customer trust this person with their finances? Will they work well with others, with a branch team? So the best way to show that is simply to speak naturally about the work you've done and the things you've learned. If you try too hard to sound like the perfect candidate, it can actually make the conversation feel less natural. So you want to be authentic, authentic personality, authentic culture fit. And the final thing I'll mention in a phone interview, your opportunity to ask questions. So at the end of the call, most recruiters will ask, what questions do you have for me? Definitely take advantage of this moment. Ask about the team. Ask what success looks like in the first 6 months. Ask what the next step in the process looks like. It shows curiosity and it shows that you're thinking seriously about the opportunity. And the goal of the phone screen, like I said, is simple. Your resume, open the door. The phone interview is your chance to show that the person behind the resume is someone that we'd be excited to move forward with to the next round. Now we're getting to the fun part. So earlier I mentioned that this presentation built around the actual training guide we use when we train our managers. So when a manager sits down to interview you, they are not just winging it. They have a structure, they have a scorecard they follow. So I'm going to give you a couple of answers to the tests. So a few things. So recruiter versus hiring manager. So first thing to understand, you'll usually talk to two different types of people in the process. The recruiter is typically the first step. So my job is to vet candidates. I'm looking at work history. I'm looking at communication skills, reliability, whether someone seems like a good culture fit for the organization. And then once you move past the recruiter, you'll usually meet the hiring manager. So their focus shifts a little. They're thinking more about the day-to-day work of the team. They want to know if you have the specific skills to succeed in that role and how you might fit into the culture of their team. And so here's a helpful way to think about it. When you talk to a recruiter, focus on your story, talk about your work ethic, talk about your reliability, talk about your interest in the company. When you talk to the manager, shift the focus to your skills. Show them how your experience helps solve the problems that they might be facing. Another thing we emphasize in our manager training is that interviews are not meant to feel like interrogations. The real goal is to determine fit. So, does this person's approach to work align with our values of the organization? Do they seem like someone who would collaborate well with the team? Many companies publish their values online on their website, and so those are incredibly helpful information to have as a candidate. If a company talks about teamwork or community involvement or continuous improvement, think about examples from your life that reflect those ideas. So maybe that's volunteer work, maybe it's leading a group project, maybe it's your mentoring of another student. When you connect your experiences to the company's values, you're helping the interviewer check off their boxes that they have about values, and you're already on to the next step. So this might be the most practical piece of advice I can give you. So most hiring managers are trained to use something called the STAR method. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. And so it's a simple structure for answering behavioral interview questions. So when you get asked something, tell me about a time you solved a problem, or tell me about a time you worked through a conflict, they're hoping your answer naturally follows that structure. So first, describe the situation, give just enough background so the interviewer understands the context, then explain the task. What was the responsibility or challenge you were facing? Next, talk about the action you took. This is the most important part. What did you actually do? And then explain the result. What happened? What improved? What did you learn? One small tip that you can really strengthen your answers here is always close the story with the results. So even a short sentence like, as a result, our team finished the project 2 days early, or the result was that our customer satisfaction scores improved. When you include the result, it shows the impact that you've made in your past experiences. And so that's really what interviewers are trying to measure. What impact can you make if we hire you to bring you on our team? A great way to prepare for interviews is to think about 5 or 6 strong stories from your experiences, and these can come from part-time jobs, internships, school projects. Just have those stories ready, and you'll be able to answer a wide range of questions without having to feel like you're, thinking of things on the spot. Now, in our training, we also talk about a few common patterns that help managers evaluate candidates. So we call these red flags. So the good news is that most of these are easy to manage with a little preparation. So the first is maintaining a positive tone when you talk about past experiences. If there's one thing you take away from all this and you think about it in all your future interviews, it is to never talk negative about a former employer or coworker. It's all about how you frame it. We've all had difficult career choices. We've all had difficult, challenges in a workplace. Maybe you had a difficult manager. Maybe you had a team project that didn't go your way. And we understand that. Interviewers understand that. We've all had those moments in our lives. And so what they're really listening for is how do you frame those experiences? So the strongest candidates will focus on what they learned and how they adapted rather than spending time blaming someone else or criticizing the situation or criticizing the company. If you're blaming management or blaming, everyone else, that does kind of come up as a red flag. So a simple approach is to just keep explanations brief, focus on growth. I know you can find yourself in some toxic work environments. The easiest way to explain that is just keep it to your values. Instead of saying toxic, just say company values did not align with my values. If you keep it to values not aligning, it's the quickest, simplest way to explain, decisions for leaving tough environments. My values did not align with those company values. I decided it was time for me to find something with more growth. The second thing that stands out is using clear examples. So when someone says, I'm a great team player, can you tell me about a time you worked on a team? So specific examples bring your experience to life. Even if you haven't had a full-time corporate job yet, or school projects, internships, campus organizations, those can all provide excellent examples. The third one is low enthusiasm energy. So showing engagement during the conversation, things like eye contact, listening carefully to the questions, responding thoughtfully, and communicating interest. You don't need to be overly energetic or performative, but just being present and engaged goes a long way. Inconsistent answers, definitely a red flag. If your answers contradict what you've put on your resume, that leads to a more digging from the recruiter side of things. Questionable, vague answers, so things that just don't sound right or lack in context. As I mentioned, job hopping, so tenure, that's a huge red flag. Unprofessional behavior, don't use swear words. I've had people use swear words in interviews. You just want to stay away from the unprofessional behavior. And concerns with compensation. So, making moves solely based on compensation or being overly concerned with money can be a red flag for some interviewers. You want to focus on the growth the company can offer, or the growth you can obtain from a company, or the impact you make. Compensation is a conversation that'll come up, but it shouldn't be, your only concern. It shouldn't be your only questions. We've had candidates who, when it's time to ask questions, all they asked about was compensation, and so didn't really feel as engaged as you want them to be. Now, most interview success doesn't come from having the perfect answers. It comes from preparation. It comes from being clear in your answers. So if you prepare a few strong stories, communicate them using the STAR structure, stay positive when discussing your past experiences, and showing genuine interest in the opportunity, you'll already be ahead of many of your peers and many of the other candidates in the hiring pool. You'll make it easier for the interviewer to see your value, and your chances of moving forward increase dramatically. And so my last final insight comes from the very last page of our hiring manager training guide. So in that guide, we remind our managers that an interview is not just about evaluating the candidate. It's a two-way street. It's also the opportunity to represent the company well and show you why you should want to work with us. So in other words, a two-way street. Yes, you are there to demonstrate your skills and your potential, but the company is also there to show you the kind of culture, leadership, and opportunity that we offer. So this is why asking questions during an interview is so important. So when the interviewer asks, "Do you have any questions for us?" It's not a polite way to end the conversation. It's your opportunity to evaluate whether the role is the right fit for you. So ask about the day-to-day responsibilities. What does a typical week look like in this role? What kinds of projects would you be working on early on? And ask about the team. What's the team culture like? How do people collaborate? What qualities make someone successful in this company or this role? Ask about growth. Is there a clear path for growth in the company? What opportunities exist for learning new skills or moving into new roles over time? And pay attention to how they answer. Do their values align with the type of work environment you want to be a part of? Do they talk about developing their employees? Do they seem excited about the team you would be joining? Because you're not just interviewing for a job, you're choosing the environment where you are going to spend a large part of your time and build the early foundation of your career. So the best interviews feel less like an interrogation and more like a conversation where both sides are exploring whether the partnership makes sense. So the reason I shared this cheat sheet with you, I want you to walk into interviews understanding what is happening on the other side of the table, and when you understand that process, it makes my job easier. And so my hope is that I pulled the curtain back a little, gave you a clearer picture of how the process works. So let your resume show your reliability, let your energy show your potential, and let your stories provide the proof. And if you're interested in what we're doing at Central Bank, or if you would simply like to connect, um, find me on LinkedIn, shoot me a connection request. Happy to accept and happy to answer any questions.
I got a few questions for you.
Sure.
So after you have the final interview, say how long does it typically take to hear back about if you got the job or not?
It depends on how their process is structured. If they're really excited about you, they'll move quickly. But it does depend, on a lot of factors. There's so many moving parts in an interview process. You've got internal associates who, could be raising their hand for the position. They've got interviews they want to get through. You may be the first person they spoke to, and you may be the person that they want to extend an offer to, but they've got, two or three more interviews lined up. And so hiring managers typically do want to see those interviews through just to be able to compare and contrast, their top choice versus the rest of the field. So it really just depends, but you can kind of gauge where you stand on their excitement level and their speed and efficiency.
Gotcha. Okay.
Great.
And should you ever reach out after an interview?
Yes, 1000% yes.
Okay. And how long should you typically wait to reach out?
I would say there's no right or wrong answer. Post interview, a couple hours, always good. A day or two, always good. But sending that follow-up email definitely sheds you in a better light. Shows that value communication, you value building a relationship. So definitely always send that follow-up note
Gotcha.
if it's a
Okay.
job you want. If you come out of that interview and you realize they're not that great, definitely don't send that email though.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else has other questions? There's a couple of questions in the chat. I just want to give the opportunity to ask a question right now.
Yeah, hi, I do have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, and thanks for the session. Like, it was really helpful. So,
Good.
let's say I am a business analyst and I do have like an experience, but I don't have a direct experience at, let's say I wanted to go into the banking side. So how a recruiter would be able to check and see if she did not have a direct experience with the banking side? So how that work? Let's say I'm like applying as a fresher, but I do have an experience as a business analyst, like, or maybe any analytics related role. So how that would be filtered out from the recruiter's side, like what points or any suggestions that you could give us to stand out?
Yeah, and I'm gonna lean on the job qualifications piece. So for the job post, they'll have qualifications. And so if you see something that says, I'm gonna use a bad example. If you see something that says you need 10 years, and this is, these are few and far between, but if you see 10 plus years and you've only got 3 or 4, probably not the best role to apply for. But if you look at those job qualifications and you see that you match maybe even 50% of them, 50, 60%, that is the job, that you should be submitting your resume for, using the cover letter to explain, how your job qualifications fit your background. That cover letter, definitely a helpful example to use to explain, your specific situations that may help you show that you have the experience or the skills or the background for the role. But look at those job qualifications. If those match what your resume has, then you should be a shoo-in for the role.
Okay, all right. So, and so let's say, like as you said, so if the resume, like if the job description says that it's a 10 plus years or maybe like a 6 or 7 years of experience needed, and like I have 50% of the job responsibilities that I really do have those skills. So in that situation, do you really suggest to go ahead and apply for the job, even if let's say I have only 5 years and they're looking out for like maybe 7 or 8 years? Like, just to give it a try, what would
Yeah,
you
I would
suggest?
I would still apply, but I wouldn't be surprised if there were other candidates who maybe overshadowed my experience and had more experience. It's very competitive out there, and so definitely, try to find those job qualifications that you match 50, 60, 70% so that you do, jump to the top of the list. Another good trick is to, if you are applying on LinkedIn, send a LinkedIn
Mhm.
message. It doesn't hurt to send a LinkedIn message to the hiring manager or to someone in the company. You may feel like you're bothering someone, but then if they feel that way, then they'll just ignore you. But for others, I always respond. I always reply to the LinkedIn messages. I always want to extend, as much assistance as I can. So reaching out to someone in the company, never hurts. You may find your way into an interview that way. It's worked, it's worked for candidates in our process. They've, applied, may have got a little lost in the shuffle. They sent me a message. I went and found their application, got them a phone screen. So finding ways to communicate outside of the application is also a good tip.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm not going to take more time. Just a last question. Sorry. So I do see that couple more like a great opportunities on the central bank too. So what would you suggest? Who would be the best person? Like if you could share your email address or any team who could really help us out or like to know more about the position, how that would work.
Yeah, let me put I can put my
I,
email in the chat.
yeah. Just in case if you have any other questions or anything, we just wanted to get in touch.
Yeah, and if you see anything on our website that matches what you're looking for, yeah, apply, shoot me an email, and I can try to get you to the right person.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Oh, and great question by
Yeah.
Philemon. So do recruiters generally prefer a 2-page resume? Is 3 pages acceptable? Whatever you can do to get at least to get all your experience on a resume. 2 pages is fine. 3 pages may be getting a bit much, but it really depends on the industry. It depends on the role you're applying for. So if you have the experience to get to 2 to 3 pages, list it. Recruiters don't like surprises. We want to know what we're getting into. We want to see the experience. If you stop after, 2 or 3 years and you mentioned on the phone screen, oh yeah, I've got 10 years of experience, but you only listed 3, I'm gonna want to know that additional 10 years. So put all the available experience you can on a resume. Everything is so digital now. The applications, come in digital. A 3-4 page resume, not the end of the world when I'm looking at it on a computer.
And just the last question there, in your experience, what makes a candidate memorable to a recruiter?
High energy, good engagement, personality, great questions. I had one candidate who will always stand out. He at the end of his professional questions, he then asked me, who, if I were looking for new music, who would you recommend as your favorite artist? And that just was a great question. It kind of broke the ice a little bit, and you're not your run-of-the-mill type of question, and so stopped me in my tracks. And everyone loves music, so they're going to want to be excited to talk about music and keep that connection going. So it showed personality, it showed engagement. So great way to stand out.
Right.
Ask them what their favorite music is or who they would recommend.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to stop the recording right now.